Record. आंखों में
Good morning and warm welcome to you all. I am Ms. Bhagyalakshmi Nageli, host for today. We continue with our Sadgun Sangh Meet 97th virtual webinar. Our topic for today is information security based on ISO 27001. Shall be taken by Dr. Sanjeevani Gogavle. Shall be covering why information security, implementation tips for ISO 27001, review of standard ISO 27001, and followed question and answer session. Let's quickly go through the agenda. Virtual inauguration by Dr. Sundar Kataria, invoking the blessing of deity, chanting of Gayatri Mantra, introduction of speaker, presentation by Dr. Sanjeevani Gogavle, question and answer session, and closing meeting. A brief introduction of Dr. Sundar Kataria. Sadgun Sangh conceived and led by Dr. Sundar Kataria, driven with a mission to elevate the quality, safety, and environmental awareness levels of industry. Sadgun Sangh is a series of educative, informative events aiming to illuminate professionals on possible solutions to current issues of industry and economy. His designation and organization is Chairman and Managing Director of International Certification Services Private Limited. His academic qualification is Mechanical Engineer, AMIE, Honorary Doctorate, Business Management. His experience are nuclear RAPP. He started his career in building India's first nuclear power plant at Rawat Kota, Rajasthan. Oil and gas, EIL. He contributed his developing industry's first oil and gas field at Bombay High since its inception. DNV. He was the head of the industry and offshore development with DNV for 2 decades. ICS. He is the founder of Indian Conformity Assessment and Inspection Body known as International Certification Services Private Limited, which is a provider of total quality solution under single umbrella with wide spectrum of services. His achievement and awards are Lifetime Achievement Award of NES Corcon. He achieved several international and national awards. I shall request Dr. Sundar Kataria to virtually inaugurate this session.
शुभं कुरु त्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तु ते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तु ते शुभं कुरु त्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरु त्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः.
Please join us for the recitation of Gayatri Mantra. introduction of keynote speaker, Dr. Sanjeevani Gogavle. Our designation and organization is Senior Trainer Consultant, Zen International System. Our academic qualification is BE in Instrumentation and Controlling Engineering, PhD in Management Science. Our area of specialization and experience is IRCA certified LA trainer for various management systems, registered auditor and trainer for quality, environment, and safety, master trainer for Z and assessor for Z, 35 years in certification field. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, dear. I've shared my slides. Jyoti was to share it.
Yeah.
Whether she'll be able to do that? Thank you.
Yeah, I will do it.
Thank you. The screen is visible and even I'm audible, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Very good morning to you all. And I'm sure the positive vibes of Gayatri Mantra always make us a little fresh. Thank you for inviting me and being with you all in this Elite Gathering team. Do we start? Hello. Thank you. So we are talking about all right. So we are talking about ISO 27001, the 2013 version. The new version is almost due and can be released anytime, yet the guidelines for 27001 are already been released. So we are on the cusp of the changeover. However, I have been an auditor, trainer, and associated with this info security right from 2005. 97 to be very precise. The old version was TIC IT, that is an IT equivalent to ISO 9000. Then it got converted into ISO 27001 or info security. And then 2013, and now it is due maybe 2020-22. So let us understand why this info security and why we need to really go for info security management. In brief, I'll try to touch on it. Whom this standard is for, because quite a few of them feel that it is not meant for us. It is only for IT industry. So we'll talk about those misnomer. I'll try to touch on all these points. However, anybody has any queries or needs further clarification, feel free to interrupt me or even ask me by unmuting or raising the hand. I'm sure Jyoti and her team will help us out in that. If not, as it is, we have a QA session at the end. Please share your question answers to the chat so that we would be able to address them effectively. And hopefully there'll be some takeaway from these sessions. I'll also touch on the benefits to individual and organization involved, manufacturing as well as trades, the whole certification process, and the interconnecting networks will definitely touch on. A brief on legal compliance, especially on the data protection and security bill. And ultimately, whatever are the learning support, I'll try to share with you. I'm sure you all have joined on this Sadgun Sangh platform. So you're already in touch with ICS, and that makes, partly the learning supports available. I'm sure this is okay with you all. If it is true, shall we move on next?
Yes, ma'am, it's fine.
Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. Very recently, the Uber data got leaked, and there were messages flying across the group saying that please uninstall the Uber. I don't know how many of you have uninstalled the Uber. In fact, I got this message when I was traveling for two reasons. I look at my WhatsApp messages only when I'm traveling. That's a time management. And secondly, I generally don't believe in spending virtual groups. So anyway, that incident has happened. Prior to that, there were multiple banks which faced similar threat. So how all we can go on uninstalling, undeleting apps and trying to protect ourselves? There is no end. Cyber security is definitely growing its attentions and importance day by day. Thanks to COVID, even the school going children, the KG start student also are forced to have mobiles. And that too is a part of education. You cannot compromise on that. So the increasing digitization and the connect leading to info security threat is unavoidable. I mean, a small kid using his parents' mobile or going to the cyber cafe. You really don't know what are the weak links in the whole process. They are infinite, if you allow me to say. So I'm definitely not going to talk about these things. I'm going to focus on the info security need for an industry, for an organization, and for an individual who wish to opt for the certification. In fact, some of my clients were forced to go for this requirement of the standard as a part of VDA compliance. Clients who are dealing with Volkswagen, one of them who has developed their line, that is the assembly line, jigs and fixtures, was forced to undergo this 27,000 for the obvious reason the person who has acquired the knowledge related to jigs and fixtures of Volkswagen has all the opportunity to know the production line related issues. Oh, thank you, sir. I got a very nice blessing message from Dr. Kataria. He's remembering our good old days, and it really makes me nostalgic. I started my career in auditing with DNV. Prior to that, I was an individual auditor. I mean, I was a management representative. So it is nice to get connected to you, sir, and I always feel blessed getting connected with you. Thank you. So what I was trying to share was the individuals and industries which are working directly on the product development or the product development line or a process development or even the jigs or fixtures of the gadgets also are bound to get some design related inputs. And these inputs, where the data will no longer be shared as a hard copy or a drawing, it will be simply shared through the Google, or it will be simply shared through a secure drive link, right? When I say drive link, I mean Volkswagen will like to share the data only through the drive link or allow you to have an access subject to. You are not going to use any unsecured network because to you it could be a business of few crores, but it can be few 100,000 crores intellectual property that is at stake for Volkswagen. Do you appreciate? So there is a good business sense to manage your supplier and to manage your supply chain through these type of standards. So irrespective of the fact whether you are in IT or you are in any other field, including the jigs, fixtures, mechanical engineering, you are required to look at it seriously. Now, ultimately, what you are trying to see is data generation, data storage, and data transfer threats, and how secure our controls are to minimize exploitation of vulnerabilities and the risk to our business continuity. So that is in a word if you're talking about ISMS. Each word of this carries a heavy meaning and we'll try and run through each and everything subsequently. But what I'm trying to say is we have no choice but to understand this standard. That is the importance of this standard. So once again, formally welcome you all on this August gathering. And for me, it is very, very special because through this platform, I get an opportunity to connect with ICS team. I don't know why they are so selective and have started me as a trainer. But I'm sure Negi sir and Kataria sir will also allow me to be associated with them as an auditor. Right? Anyways, I'm kidding. Shall we go next? Right. So when we are talking about info security, we are focusing on three parts. One, confidentiality. Second, integrity. And third is availability. When the personal data is being hacked, necessarily it is a confidentiality. But the threat it poses is comparatively less as compared to any national or the discussion what we did related to Volkswagen design line, right? So these threats related to confidentiality can be low, high, or very high. They can be medium. So you all can decide whether you want to have 3 by 3 matrix or 5 by 5 matrix. All these things we'll discuss later as well. But the idea over here is please classify and categorize your data. Highly confidential data should have better controls. Comparatively, deploy all your controls logically and appropriately based on the priority risk, starting with confidentiality, followed by integrity, and indeed linked to availability. Let's understand what are these risks. For the obvious reason, in an industry, they have a lot of data. And I remember some of us say that there is nothing from my side to steal. I mean, if anybody comes to know about my name, address, what way it is going to matter. Do you know one thing? Invariably, in most of the security verification to your credit cards and bank, they have put your name, birth date, and address. So if it is lost, a hacker is served in a plate to look into these aspects. So that is important, whether you are an individual or an organization or an institute. Of late, with this digitization era, most of the government portals allow you to enter in your data, your information on the platform. Now, me pretending as a user, try to enter, and through my weak link, if this government data is hacked, it's a very high level info security incidents. So all of us, whether in individual capacity or in organizational capacity or as a governance authority or bureaucrats, have to really look at all these factors of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. When you're talking about integrity, it's basically tampering of the data. And there were a lot of frauds and incidences where the names were changed, the data were tampered. Ultimately, the availability is very, very critical when I'm dealing with the data for some critical process. For example, I'm a surgeon and I'm instructing in some other country through a conference link for a surgery. And if there is a data interruption, how serious it is. The patient is already ripped open. And the assistant doctor or a co-doctor or a co-surgeon is not getting the next instruction. So every microsecond delay in the connectivity can mean the life of the patient, right? So data security per se, we are not going to talk about the contents of the data, that is confidentiality. We are also going to talk about the availability and the connectivity. Indeed, we are going to talk about the integrity of the data. So if you're clear about these three factors, CIA, we have understood the foundation of info security. We as an auditor try to understand the organizational needs of CIA and indeed go through the information assets and information processing facilities. With this advent of industrialization and industry 4 type of activities, digitization, almost even the smallest of lathe manufacturer would necessarily have some data which will have its CIA. So how we go about it? I mean, if we start talking about these people also following an info security control, they may feel really scared and unsure how they will go about it. So the standard allows you to have a statement of applicability, SOA. If you're a designing organization, that is a software programming and development setup, you have a different operational control or development control, right? That is A.12, which talks about development. If you are in using domain, you have a different controls. So this standard is definitely user friendly, and the users have to detail what is the scope of applicability. Currently, there are 114 controls defined, and based on the proper application and boundary and industry setup, you can adopt to some and indeed reject some. When you are rejecting, that is, you are excluding, you are supposed to give a justification why you are excluding these and how, in absence of these things, you will still take care of your info security. So, very logical, user friendly approach. Shall we go next? Yeah. So, team, basically, we are looking at the clause. Quickly, we'll run through the clause so that we are equipped and we are ready to understand the significance of each and every control aspect. This is a first standard. We started referring to context of organization. 2013, it has raised these aspects. 2015 onwards, the remaining standards released after 2015, like QMS, ISO 9001, EMS, that is ISO 14001, and indeed the OSHAs, which got the last one in the entry, 2018. All of them have aligned to this requirement of context of organization. So the higher level structure standardization, I would suggest, or I would say, if you permit me, is based on this 2013 ISMS guideline. Indeed, there are certain points additional, but starting with clause number 4.1, that is understanding the organizational context, was first time defined and addressed in the ISMS. Over here, we are talking about the internal external factors and the issues which are important for info security. For example, the controls that I'm going to look at, or the issues I'm going to look at as a hospital, a surgeon following a net conference, or a lathe machine operator with two machines, are entirely going to be different. So the standard says, look at the issues that are important to you, internal and external. When we say internal issues, we talk about capability, capacity, the values, culture, governance, competence, and likewise, when we are talking about external issues, we talk about political, economical, social, technological, legal, and market environment, that is competition and all, right? So typically, once we have identified that these are the issues or these are the incidences that are serious to my business, I will see who all are getting impacted if I will not be able to comply to these issues. So obviously, the next logical step is clause number 4.2, where we try to enlist all those who can be called as an interested parties. Now let us understand what is interested parties. It is an individual or an organization who gets influenced by us, or who perceives to get influenced, or who can influence us. So virtually, it can be your supplier, customers, government agencies, legal authorities, employees, shareholders, and likewise. So you decide who are those guys who are serious to you as far as execution of this info security is concerned. Once you have identified these individuals or organization, go for identifying their needs and expectations and map your issues and your competencies to see that you can meet them. If you can meet them, excellent. If you can't meet them, in such cases, you have to go for the other substitute that is called as risk mitigation plan. Because if you can't meet them, it is your business risk, isn't it? So, based on that, and clause number 6 is directly being derived. But prior to we jump to the clause number 6, it also helps you in defining your applicability and boundary, which is clause number 4.3. So if you are trying to revise and define and design your system related to ISMS, you will have to focus on the requirement of clause number 4.1, 4.2, and the applicability based on your activities. Once your scope is frozen, you go for defining the applicable processes that will ensure your management system is effective and clearly helping all the stakeholders or interested parties and is able to handle the context related issues. Very important, very fundamental requirement of the standard. Hope it's clear. Shall we go next? Hang on, I have not covered it. By next, I mean the next point, 5.1.1. The next clause is 5.1.1, where we talk about the leadership and commitment. No standard or no management system can be implemented unless the big bosses are involved in it. Their accountability, their commitment is very vital for the standards to go for implementation successfully. Their intent or their directions are always expressed in terms of policies. So this standard calls for various policies for info security on and above to the organizational policy per se. Once they have defined these policies, obviously, individuals who are competent enough, who are empowered enough with the authorities and responsibilities are put together. That is nothing but an organizational chart. What I've shown here is a vertical organization or a vertical hierarchy, but depending on your activities, you can also go for matrix type or a flat organization. It depends. I mean, although I've used only vertical hierarchy, doesn't mean that 5.3 has to follow vertical hierarchy. Right? Now we can go next year. We'll go, yeah. So the whole focus of this is you have defined the role, responsibilities, competencies, you have set the directions through policies, resources and budgets are demonstrated for commitment, issues are identified. Now the intellectual technocrat should take over. What they should take over is firstly, identify what are the effect of uncertainties or the risks that are getting the vulnerabilities into threat. This exploitation of vulnerability into threat is a risk for your business continuity, can be a risk for your customer satisfaction, can be a risk for your employee satisfaction. So all this monitoring of risk is indeed derived from 6.1.1, and indeed some good points, some exploring of the good controls also come from this. We are indeed talking about the risk management concept, which is very classically and conventionally accepted as 4T concept. So given a choice, devise a technology which will not even required to address this risk. They also say it is an elimination or termination of the risk. However, if such technology is not feasible or affordable, you can always go to the second tier, that is engineering and administrative controls. Very common in software industries. Even now, it's being adopted almost in every industry. The entry controls through thumb readers is a very direct indication of a physical control. Similar engineering controls can mean introducing new platform, new tools, firewalls, and likewise. For whatever reason, the risk is so serious that it can still not be controlled through this. Then you get involved, the experts, or get insured. So that is generally manage or transfer. And in spite of that, if it continues, evaluate the impacts. If it can be accepted in the low risk, call it as an acceptable residual risk. If it cannot, take up an improvement point, and that is nothing but your info security objective. Most of your serious important things are taken up as an improvement objectives. So this drive is right from 4.1, then 5.1, am I? Could be a bandwidth issue. Is it my audibility issue, dear? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was just requesting, shall we go to the next slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I moved on to a little more secure area. Hopefully this should not have a similar issue. But if you have any audibility issue, you please keep me posted. All right. So when we are talking about the various risk associations and the vulnerability as well as the risk analysis, we are not only restricting to whatever is applicable and defined in the standard in totality, we are also looking at Annex A, which gives a generalized control that an organization should adopt to. So out of these 114 controls, you have to understand, interpret, and identify the applicable controls and justify which are not applicable. So this controls leading to the risk treatment plan is your next requirement of the clause. The typical risk that we anticipate when we go for risk analysis and risk treatment are the data theft, data losses, misuse of our data, typically the cyber frauds, data leaks, and these are generally even violation of IPR. It can be a litigation or a legal case. Patch updation not compatible or not done, or unauthorized access. Not always all the losses that are incurred are retrievable. So you have to really prevent them, because once it has happened, as I was saying, I got a message that uninstall your Ola or Uber. I mean Uber. I was already traveling in the Uber. So whatever was a loss that has already taken place. However, this is how we have to work on and see that we are secured to the extent we can. All right. That's all the reason why we should go for info security. Shall we go next? Yeah. So this is something CI analysis, and you have to categorize it. Whatever you can control, you have to control it. Let us understand, having a risk brought to zero is impossible. There will remain some security issues or the risks. We call it as a residual risk. Only thing, we have to evaluate this residual risk and take all the precaution so that business continuity or your customer or your own interests are not hampered. So when you're trying to look at these risk levels, this 27,000 family gets related to your management review and their risk appetite, how far they can still live with this. The risk management as well as risk appetite will decide what is your residual risk. Whatever you cannot uh, go beyond, you accept it and try to redraft it in such a way that your mock drills are ready and you are willing to cope up with such situation if at all such thing arises. It becomes a part of your policy and you inform and instruct the people so that they are well aware of handling such situations, right? However, we have a long journey from high risk to low, medium risk to low risk. So we are still safer and better. So this critical thing, that what we can control, is the journey of risk analysis and risk treatment. All right. So this was in nutshell how we go about risk reduction, and each individual organization and their risks will differ. But this is a concept. In case of any issues, you have to follow this concept. You have to define what is your trigger level, when you will start your risk management, and what will be your residual acceptance risk level. So they call it as a threshold level and residual risk level. So these levels have to be clearly defined explicitly along with your risk criteria, and they have to be adhered as a part of planning. Shall we go next? Yeah. So as I said, some of them you can change immediately. But if you're going for some software installation or any hardware installation, it not only calls for budgeting, it also calls for employee training. The concerned stakeholders should be made aware but those which are common to organization will go as an organizational objective. For example, setting a firewall for designing machines or designer's machine could be a risk treatment plan for my design department. But having a thumb reader or an entry point or having a CCTV camera could be my organizational objective, because everybody in that organization is subjected to this threat. So likewise, we have to really look at the objectives, identify them, and also prepare an objective deployment plan. By objective deployment plan, we mean what is to be done, how it is to be done, who is the responsible person, and by when it will be done. All right. So generally that 5W1H plan can be deployed provided your objectives are SMART. That is specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and indeed time bound. As an auditor, we'll definitely look at it, the objectives as well as deployment plan. Even as an implementer, we have to look at it, right? Shall we go next? Well, when we are talking about risk identification, I did touch on RTP. Now, this clause in totality, let us understand this is the crux of ISMS. The most effective RTPs will always ensure that you have a very sound and safe ISMS system. For some reason, this exercise, if not correctly done, they will remain as a weak link in your ISMS. All right. So a strong identified plan and the responsibility allocation and actionable things, taking care of the top management as well as the execution team, and ensuring there are no issues or no gap going beyond the acceptable residual risk. In spite of all that, in the dynamic, something may happen, but at least we are aware and it will be easy to investigate, analyze, and to improvise. So RTP, the risk treatment plan, will definitely be a protection, correction, elimination, or prevention of the impact. So it is futuristic. It is not possible to have a total security against the risk. If you all remember, I've been emphasizing it. And the main reason is, like, you go on updating your controls, the hackers are equally important. They have their own methodologies. There are some cyber fraud reported where they don't even need your OTP, but your bank accounts are cleaned up. All right. So the technology is a boon, the technology can be a curse, and that's why let us be determined, be ethical in our approach, and safeguard our own self. Forget about others. So then RTP will be definitely for risk treatment to minimize the impact. And it should be prioritized because see, there's so many things. As I said, 114 control, and each control you have some gap and you start with an RTP. There are going to be 114 RTPs. So what do you do? Are you going to start everything at a time? And do you have 114 people who can be assigned this responsibility to do it in a priority? Surely not. It's difficult. So what you do? Simple, obvious logic. Whatever is the highest priority where the loss is very high, do that first, then the medium, and likewise. So this logical approach to prioritizing is another important issue. And here I will strongly suggest the top management has to be involved. All right. So, hello. Any issue about my audibility? I'll close my cam if it is creating any bandwidth issue.
No, ma'am, no issues. You can continue, ma'am.
Okay. So with this, we have understood the planning part of this system. With the next slide, we'll go to the doing part. Next slide, please. Yes. As a part of doing, we need to have resources. And the most important resources are your info security assets and the overall organizational layout. Many of us don't understand that even the printed paper can be an info security asset. If there is a fire, all this data which is on paper will be available or not available is depends on what is the extent of fire, isn't it? So such sort of layouts, fire extinguishers, fire drills become critical even for info security. But more than that, we are more concerned about the various injections or various penetrations which are unethical, unexpected. So a drill of an info security can be a desktop drill. Nobody has to get up from their place and go to the assembly point. If it is fire only, then once they can do it. But when it comes to data security, these injections can be done on your system without you getting off your desk. So info security risk management is little different, or I'll say it is hybrid, taking care of both. And to do this sort of info security drills, you need a competent person. So obviously the next thing talks about the competence of an individual. You have to prepare some skill metrics sort of where you'll identify that your team has the competence and they can be assigned the task. If they don't have these competence, you have to ensure they get this competence. And the obvious method is training. For some reason, if their learning is not effective, you can always have counseling, mentoring, job rotation, or even if required, subcontracting the whole activity or hiring an expert. So depending on the situation, you can take your action. But see to it, the competence gap is identified and it is filled up. Are we clear on this? If yes, we'll move on to the next slide. Next slide, please. Yep. So when you're talking about awareness, believe me, when I'm working with Euronet, one of my very interesting client, I mean, they're basically in software related to ATM cards. So you can understand the bandwidth, you can understand the complexity, and you can understand the issues involved in this whole process. They were saying they have to appear for this info security awareness test, every one of them, including the MD to the housekeeping boy, every 6 months. And like a school children, they have to maintain their scorecards. If somebody doesn't reaches to certain level, he has to redo the training, reappear for it. This is all through software module. But what they're trying to see is an awareness is the most important link. When I go for an audit, I've seen some people happily having the non-clear screen. I mean, there is no screensaver, and if I just look at their system, I can easily see what they're working on just by one single look. And if I want to click on any of the folder, I can easily access that folder because there is no screensaver. There is no clear screen policy being followed. So if I ask them, why are you doing it? They say, oh, they were not aware. So a determined hacker, if by simply walk through without any pen drive or any data carrying capacity, only human memory and human detection system can have a very effective entry points. So in such case, having an employee awareness to certain level becomes very, very critical. And by awareness, I'm not saying that they should be able to rattle out all the 27,000 clauses like us as a trainer, or go for the info security or an IT Act or the Cyber Security Act. No, we only mean they should know the points which are related to their activities, why they should be doing it, and what they should be avoiding. So, a simple do's and don'ts per job profile and a compliance and monitoring thereof will take care of this awareness. Of course, indeed. Along with this compliance to the role and responsibility, that's also supposed to know the info security policies and objectives because they play a vital role, isn't it? This is very important. Shall we go next? Yeah. When it comes to documented system, prior to that, let's go into communication, that is clause 7.4. All of us know each other's intent only through communication, maybe a written or a verbal or maybe some other form. So the internal as well as external communication plays a major role. And this plays an extremely major role when you're addressing any incidents. How you let the remaining world know that your data has leaked plays a major role without impacting or tarnishing your image. I remember I'm a account holder in HDFC, and there was an incident of a data leak. Although my account was not tampered, I got a mail accepting a fact that this has happened and these are the actions we are taking. Please bear with us. No need to close your account. So that clearly shows that external communication is equally vital. Indeed, on and about to incidences, it can be a legal compliances or it can be even serious case where you have to approach the police and the cyber authorities. So all these become critical records when it comes to communication. And you have to devise appropriate medias and methods corresponding to this so that all your stakeholders are well taken care of and they are well aware of the situation. Well, whatever is a written documented information goes as a 7.5. But when you're going to put it on paper, it becomes associated with CIA. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability becomes a critical issue. The minute I say that you're going to document it, although that shows all files, you don't know what is there in the file. There can be some CD drives, there can be some backup folders. So data can be in hard form or soft form. Both of them you have to control through your documented information. Of late, most of these systems have the data only through servers, and there are multiple multi-layer protections. However, how you control is entirely depending on your competence, capability, and resources. What you need to control is the creation, that is the authorization for the correctness of the contents, updation, that is nothing but a change management, and definitely the distribution after the end of the life if it is preserved as a evidence. So overall, treating an information in whatever form it is as an asset, an info asset, is very important, and the controls are very well defined in clause number 7.5. Shall we go next? Yeah. So if you allow me to say, the typical documentation hierarchy, a very classical hierarchy from good old days, that is 1986 onwards, it start talking about policies which are at the apex manual that gives a direction. Then you have procedures which link the policy into the activities or the evidences, where actionable points are detailed out. Further down, you have your work instruction or specific debugging tools or risk assessment softwares. And lastly, these are the records that you generate as an evidence of activity being done. All right. So this is our documentation hierarchy, and as an auditor, we'll be running through all these, although are sample representations. All right, shall we go next? Next slide, please. Thank you. Now, the most critical and important point is an operational aspect. Operational planning and control to handle all these risks with various departments and various gazettes and various individuals. Because please remember, an individual is also an information asset. because what is there in my memory, only I know. I get the benefits, or that's a risk. In fact, there is a very common thing which is being discussed and debated: moonlightning. Are you aware of this concept? What is moonlightning? These software and IT people are allowed to work from home. And after working for 8 hours out of 24, they have all the free time to do whatever they want to do for the obvious reason. If any one of them try to utilize this free time to work for a competitor, is it not a data threat? It's a major data threat. So that type of thing is known as a moonlightning. And a very recent case has happened. Almost 56 individuals or employees were sacked from Wipro. That's a flashing news against the moonlightning. It was proven they were having multi-employment. And how it got tracked? It got tracked through their PF record. 2 companies were submitting the Provident Fund or their names. Thanks to our Government of India cyber drives. If they're working with 2 employers, it gets tracks through the computerized software PF system. So such risks always remain with an individual, with an asset, with any organizational layout, facilities, and otherwise. So all these what you have identified in clause number 6, start implementing it. If you have said that you are going to have a thumb reader, clause number 8 will talk about, have you done it? How you have done it? What controls are there? Are these policies being followed? So again, it will go into the implementation of risk treatment plan. In clause number 6.1.3, you will say that you will have a session of so and so for Dr. Sanjeevani for data sharing or info security management. On so and so date, you will verify, is she active, is she connected, is that data available? So these actual execution monitoring and execution controls will become a part of clause number 8 or operations. Again, there'll be a risk treatment plan for execution, that is at tactical level, a review for residual risk, and indeed operational controls associated with it. Shall we go next? Right. So when you start executing it, you yourself as an individual, but all those who are connected on your platform or your service or your organization, like your supplier. We started with the first case of Volkswagen, where we were trying to see that their supplier will have an access to their database. So the direct as well as indirect risks, when you started doing it, whether they are following it. It can be a supplier audit, it can be a supplier certification, or it can be physical visits and verification by your executives. So follow your own method. You devise and program your own plan, what is to be monitored, who is going to monitor it, at what frequency it has to be monitored, what are your acceptance norms, what records you're going to capture, and what is the gap identified. When you identify a gap, you have to work on CCA, that is corrections and corrective actions, to ensure the non-conformities don't reoccur and the similar cases are prevented. Proper preventive measures and improvement measures are initiated. So this is very important clause, and in this clause, the top management has to get directly involved in terms of deploying the resources required, having a proper tools. So all your VAPT and monitoring, all these things will come in this clause, right? Fine, we'll go to the next clause. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. The next important point is not the technical monitoring, but monitoring of the info security management system, ISMS monitoring. And that evaluation for your system is always through an internal audit. So you have to identify an independent auditors who are competent, who will be doing this job. A team of auditors will be assigned this task. They will, of course, prepare some plans and programs, ensuring the critical areas and those based on the previous NCs or changes will have more time and more frequency, right? So this whole exercise on and about your technical audit and analysis will be a system audit and analysis, and you will identify various factors that are very vital and critical to this whole process. And whichever are identified as a gap, again follow improvisation procedure with CCA, correction and corrective action. So typically, the internal audit program becomes a mandatory document. There should be qualified competent auditors and one coordinator who will take care as per schedule the audits have taken place. Because I've seen most of the time, these programmers and these body shopping employees of software companies, or even for that matter, a small timer, as I said, a person owning two lathes, have to fight against so many odds and they don't have a time. You go and say, I want to do your audit. They said, no, I can't spare my system. Don't bother me. So this work priorities, these system sharing time and slots are challenges in internal as well as external audits. And how best you handle it is something what you're going to look at it, right? So a typical detailed audit protocol as well as audit compliances, identifying the gap, closing those gaps, and ensuring your system is improvised and continually improve on is the intent of this clause. If it is clear, we'll go to next. Next, please. In this clause, the top management is directly going to get involved. By that I mean, no other person can chair a management review meeting. I always feel honored and respected when I see Kataria sir is there for this. He's involved in this design and development of the Sadgun Sangh. And then he always try to see to it that it gets executed in a proper way. What does it demonstrate? It just demonstrates he's serious about this knowledge sharing, which also means everybody else better be serious about it, right? So this level of commitment is called for in the standard when we talk about management review. There is a very clear-cut fixed agenda defined, starting with the previous management reviews, changes internal, externally, feedbacks on information security, the non-conformities, measurement results, audit results. Likewise, I mean, this can be detailed out. You can always refer to the original standard. But see to it, ultimately the aim of this exercise is all the senior management team, along with the top boss, sit across and come to a conclusion as far as the resource deployment is concerned, as far as the improvement opportunities are concerned, and then maybe even review of the residual risk. All right? Clear? Hello? Fine. So ideally, as output of management review, it is not only seeing how you have performed, you also see what is not so good and how you are going to further improvise on. Shall we go next? Next slide, please. Yeah. This is a conclusion of the first cycle or the first year or the first interval of your management system implementation and an opportunity to improvise on further how to go for the subsequent improvisation. There are two output or two possibilities. One is what you have decided, you have achieved, fantastic, time to celebrate. And also means that you go and take up some higher challenge now because you have done the previous one. So you're going to increase your mark. Second, you couldn't reach it. Then analyze it, what went wrong, and improvise on it. So necessarily this clause talks about non-conformity handling, deviations, corrections, and corrective actions in detail. Once you have done this learning and improvisation, you are ready with some improvement projects for your system effectiveness, and you're equipped to have a better level of info security. So higher targets, higher controls, and better system would mean your employees, your data, your systems take care of CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the overall system. Are we clear on this? If this is clear, we have just continued and run through quickly the whole standard. And let us go to the subsequent part of it. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So please remember what we are talking about, a major cause that we take care not only of our business, our stakeholder, but also the society in general, the bureaucrats. So it takes care of the recognition once you get awarded. Compliance is also assured, but that info security safety culture is established in your organization. It gives you a very transparent, objective, dependable improvisation process. PDCA, plan, do, check, and act. If you notice, 4, 5, 6 are planning, 7 and 8 are acting, 9 and 10, 7 and 8 are doing, clause number 9 is checking, and clause number 10 is acting. So the whole standard 4 to 10 is fit in PDC. Ultimately, we are talking like a zero incidents or a blood dress still manufacturing culture. But then it is something similar. I mean, if you see a physical accident, you know the impact. In info security, the impact cannot be seen because it become only evident when the issues are challenged through your info security or any other controls likewise. So please, this is much more serious. The continually improving and learning organization has better chance to survive and continue it. Those otherwise have a higher chance of not continuation. You have to take care of the engagement of employees, the development of leadership down the line, and it has a real sense for accident and incidences preventing, because otherwise they can be very costly, not only for you, for the whole individuals. So it is a proactive, preventive, and continual improvement based system. All the best. Shall we go next? I've seen questions already flooding in, so I like to complete my remaining 2-3 slides and then proceed. So obviously the major benefit is legal compliance. Your contracts, you get more contracts because your customers can trust you. Like VDA, I told you, it needs 27 as their foundation. We are safeguarding the CIA for the organization, always the interested parties. So these are just the tips. The real thing is you're more committed, you're more accountable, and you're more empowered systematically. Shall we go next? So there are all lots of things. As I said, an individual establishes a transparency, accountability, and commitment. There's an employee engagement, traceability and objectivity, as well as predictability. There can be a recognition also when you say that I'm working with so and so company, which is ISO 27000 certified. Or this was an improvement project which I achieved where I've proven all my capabilities. You also use the system synergy and leadership in sync so as to have better results. And it's an iterative process. It is not like your graduation, you graduated and that's the end of learning. You need to reactivate, revalidate, keep on learning and improvise. It also helps becoming a better relationship management and a better associate, because there is a transparency, dependability, and reliability in the transaction. You can see this pic which shows that there's a mess of data which anybody and everybody can pick it up and mess with it. But if you are organized, such things will never happen. At least such incidences are avoided when you go for 27001. All right, so do it, enjoy it, celebrate it. Shall we go next? How do we go about it? So the obvious and the first step you all have already taken, start learning. That can be a small curtain raiser through our today's interaction. If you're serious, if you think it is for you, finalize the scope. SOA, Statement of Applicability. Go ahead, start defining your policies, procedures, processes, conduct awareness, carry on implementation, internal audits, MRM. And however, you'll have to go for the identification once you feel you are ready, and go for a certification audit if your points raised in the gap identification are close. You get awarded a certificate successfully if again there are no many points or there are no major NCs. Ultimately, the effective closeout of this corrective action will qualify you for enjoying the status as certified for 3 years, subject to successful completion of periodic audit. And then thereafter, you have a choice for recertification, isn't it? So this is the whole certification cycle. Shall we go to next? This is the last slide, and with this, I'd like to take up a QA. Jyoti, will you be coordinating, or should I just run through the chat messages and take it up?
You can continue, ma'am. You want to.
All right, thank you. So let me see the chat messages.
Sure, ma'am.
Okay, I can see. I really don't know what is a Wipro case, but yes, it is published on the newspaper, so that is what I addressed to it. Moonlight me. Then the questions for speaker. Where does BPC, business process continuity, factor in the audit process? Is a part of monitoring. How does a small MSME test its business continuity process? Okay. Obviously, there is a dedicated control on business continuity is a part of Annex. So it allows you to identify the threats or the security issues which are very critical for your business existence or business continuity. If you are trying to say, see, when you go for doing an audit for info security, it is not the requirement of 4.1 to 10.3. It is also the associated standards. So when you're looking at the associated standards related to business continuity, we are going to address this. It need not be a part of monitoring per se, but indeed it is a part of the risk process. That is the whole standard per se. Now you're talking about how does a small MSME test its BCP. So ideally they have to identify what are the emergencies that they anticipate. And once you start following these, define what best you have set the control and are these control effectively. For example, you expect that somebody can be intruding in my data, so you fit the firewall. Then there are tools available which make you test your correctness of the firewall. In spite of the firewall, if this data can be hacked, then no, it is not secure. You need to improvise on it. Or in certain cases, there are softwares like Wireshark and all, which you use it and see if there are any open ports where you are vulnerable to hacking. So depending on your activity, VAPT can be one test, following any other software can be the other method, and that these are the two best method when it comes to data security. I can see the fire drills and all you must be very well familiar with. Please adhere to that. If you say it is difficult for me to do it, yes, indeed, running a business is not easy. At the same time, if you want this business to sustain and continue, you have to put in efforts. And the first and the foremost effort is to identify what can go wrong and how you'll be able to prevent it. So the software tools are the best tools, as well as the physical running around and the control is the add-on. So it's a hybrid test. If you want any further details, you can always write to me or through these streams, through them to me, and I should be able to help you out in details, case to case. Okay. I've just put on the chat message my response contact number. You can always feel free to contact me. Thank you. So I hope I have answered you.
Hello.
Yes, dear.
Ma'am, we have one more question.
Yeah.
That is, what practical test does the auditor generally look for while doing ISMS audit?
Yeah, actually, as I said, we'll definitely go through the VAPT report. We can also go to their administrator and look at their CPU utilization. Are there any spikes? Are there any capacity limitations? So we may not go for actual deploying any tools, but whatever data is accessible with a keystroke, with the permission of the administrator, we can always overview the patch updates and related things. And generally, these things are covered in their VAPT also. Are we through? Have I answered? The second question in the chat box is control of documented information in ISMS, how it is different in QMS. Absolutely, there is no difference. It is a common clause. However, when we are talking about ISMS, we are also talking about a lot of software licenses. So the Copyright and Patent Act is imposed on you. And this becomes a legal violation or a legal non-conformity because the auditor will definitely look at the licenses of the softwares you're using. In a QMS, whether you show a printout, hard or soft copy, the auditors will be happy for the contents or the data that you have. They may not go into the licensing things because it is not a standards requirement. But over here, the license 6 or IPR becomes a mandatory thing. It otherwise becomes a legal violation. So that is the only additional thing. The next question over here is, other than IT industries, where is 27001 applicable? Can system be implemented? One example. I started my session with the auto ancillaries which are supplying to Volkswagen, being forced to do 27 as a requirement of VDA compliance. So a person having a simple lathe who is developing a gazette for this attachment in the assembly line has to go for 27. Are we together? Anybody and everybody gets covered.
Yeah, one more question. Ma'am,
Yes.
see what happens is for very small businesses or individuals, even, Microsoft and Windows, they ignore if a person, for example, operating from home does not have a licensed software. I mean, they are not very serious about it if it is done from a home environment. But for offices, yes, if it is a big company and using unlicensed software, then they are very harsh. So how does the auditor, look into it? Because the majority of softwares that are operating from home may not be authorized softwares, you see. And
So we are definitely appreciating your thing. I mean, I'm not much difference. I hardly a 7 team employee in the field of my operations. So I'm not also all that big. But look at the consequences. All this data of 7 employees is equally important for me for the business continuity.
agreed, yeah.
Can I afford to lose that? For me, for my existence, I have to take care of info security. So
Yeah.
we shouldn't be penny wise and pound foolish. I mean, saving on some few licensing fees and risking my whole business continuity, it's not wise, isn't it? Of
Yeah,
late, there are a lot of.
okay. Yeah. I got your point. The
No,
only
I'm
question
giving
is,
you the solution, what we do, because I'm in the same boat.
yeah,
I generally hire a software through the common software platforms through cloud. There, you can hire their basic infrastructure at only renting fees. I don't have to buy the software, I can rent out the software. So such software platforms are readily available at nominal rates. And the minute I stop using the software, I don't have to pay the rents. So they are reasonably worth using. I use personally for that. It is like hosting your website through Google, and then I have to pay only for that website rent charges, and I don't have to buy and take care of the security of my website. So such solutions are available because software as a service provider, software as a platform, software as a control is very nicely developed and very effectively being managed. All
right.
right.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Sundar has a question. He has raised his hand.
Yes, doctor. I'm glad to see you. I'm so happy to see you
All
after
right.
a long. How are you doing?
I am fine, fine. Thank you, thank you. Nice to see you too. And definitely, I remember you well. And started in the and instrumental and putting things together and launching this product. Very good. Thank you very much. I have two questions now. Few of the developing countries, I can name it also, like Nepal and Sri Lanka. Now, this software are allowed for education institutions at
Yes, much subsidized. I agree. Sir, your voice is breaking and there is some signal issue. Will you please use the chat? Jyoti, probably you will have to intervene. Sir's network is not very stable. Or is it my network issue? Can you hear me, Jyoti?
Yes, ma'am. There is some network
Yeah,
issue
so
with
it
me.
could be the network issue with Sir.
Yes,
And I don't want to miss his question before I go further. Can you please request
yes,
him to put the question through chat?
yes, ma'am. I request you.
Thank you. Okay, till Sir's question is routed through, there's another question in the chat. Can you explain us about a residual risk with some examples? Well, if you see any of the risk analysis or an RTP, as I said, the risk cannot be zero. I have a possibility of a data getting lost or corrupt, so I take a backup. Very well defined practical procedure. Now, what happens if there is a fire? Even this backup will get lost. So what do? I take additional backup in the remote area. So if this is lost, that is at least able to retrieve. Now what happens when I'm going to take this backup? There's every chance this backup is not accessible when I want. For example, I'll give you a classical example. I was doing, it wasn't info security, it was a business continuity audit. And generally we do all drills and see the continuity tests. So there was a real life scenario. The whole thing was flooded. We were not able to travel and we were isolated. It was an emergency of level, they say it level 1, level 2. So it was a serious emergency where the whole bureaucrats had taken over the control. So getting and retrieving a data from other location was impossible for them. Isn't it? So when such risks get complicated, then yes, such situations or such vulnerabilities get explored. They become evident. But please remember, such situations are rare and few. For that, I have to say that as my business, once in 10 years, this flood has taken place. So do I take additional control for this? No need. Let me leave with this. So this is my acceptable risk. Have I answered you about the acceptable residual risk, sir? Am I clear? Well, sir, please. I mean, your line got disconnected. We couldn't hear you.
yeah, correct,
It's
correct.
better
Sorry,
now.
sorry.
It's better.
Yeah.
No
Now it's
issue.
better. Okay. I was having a question about like this. Some of the developing countries, this softwares are allowed at free of cost for education institute and other thing. But taking advantage of that clause, people use it in commercial also. And we faced a lot of problem. They say we don't require license because it is a free. Now, can you put light on this? How to deal such situation?
Honestly, I'm not a legal expert, but sir, question from you, I cannot deny. I can only share what we are facing because we are in the same boat. Yeah, when freebies are available, we always say nothing is free under the sun. When it is free, you are the product itself. In software, when anything comes free, that you have to submit your data, you have to accept their cookies, you have to accept their policies, only then it comes free. And they assume when it is an educational institute, you have no business intentions. So you're vulnerable, all your data, is vulnerable to all the cookies that have built in that can be acquired and accessed.
Disconnected.
Hello, am I audible? I'm just putting off my video, so probably the bandwidth will get increased. Am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you hear me? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
now
So I was
audible.
stating the basic fact: there is nothing freebies under the sun. If anything is coming free, you yourself are the product. So all this so-called free data
Vera?
is always exploiting your information because you have to accept their terms, condition, and cookies, which means you're accepting your data to be vulnerable. And most of the education institute do it because they feel there is no business link. But then it is a cost of their students and cost of their other associates. So you have to educate these people that this is not acceptable. Don't go for freebies. Evaluate the returns that are associated with the small licensing copies, and there are substitutes available. I mean, when I was saying that most of this software and hardware is now available on cloud at a nominal rental fees, because honestly, going on upgrading your software licenses itself is a costly proposition. Going on upgrading your hardware itself is a costly proposition. So this cloud has given a solution to most of these issues, but we as a professional in this field have to make people aware. Please don't go for freebies. There are nothing free under the sun. There is always a vested business interest. And by doing that, you are making us more vulnerable. So, sir, we are in the field of educating other. We have to continue whether they listen or not is their risk, their business. I'm sorry, there is no answer, but then this is a reality, sir. Thank you. Thank you for raising such an
Thank you.
important point. So
Thank-
the second point you are trying to raise, please hear me.
Yeah, second point was what is you see the market for using AI, artificial intelligence, in ISMS means contest.
There is going to be a lot of demand for ISMS. See, actually, when we say ISMS, we generalize the whole 27K series of standards. There are dedicated different set of standards. ISO 27001 talks about the info security system, management system. If you're going for cloud, because most of your AI calls for a cloud connect, 27018 is another standard. So as there is a new technology coming up, new standards are also equally coming up. So if I'm talking about ISMS, yes, there are standards, but if I'm talking about 27001, well, 27001 request you just to identify the risks associated with the data generation, data storage, data transfer. So all these AI, if they have a weak link, you have to attack it. Even the data being transferred on the cloud, you have to attack it. But there are much more evolved and dedicated standards for attempting for the hacker. A lot of stakes involved. So there are, as you go to different sectorial requirements, additional standards are being developed by ISO. So you please look at it, which standard you're applying and applicable, go for that. But all of them count on 27001 as a foundation and basic standard. So I'll strongly suggest at least start with 27001 and then go for any add-ons, right? Thank you. Very valid, very important point. Thank you so much, sir.
So, madam, one more pertinent question comes here. There are organizations whom we try to convince, okay, that your IT security needs to be audited by a certifying body and go for certification. Now, these people have various reasons. We are implementing CMM, we have a, and in huge public sector undertakings and all, they say our people are trained, they are qualified. CMM kar rahe hain hum log. So, I mean, please, throw some light. How does ISMS really?
Sir, Sir, you're sharing my pain. I'm in the same boat. But after some time, I say, God forgive them. They don't know what they're saying, what they're doing.
I know because
We can't change somebody's mindset. It
I
is
know.
essential that we can convince logically, but if they're still adamant, it's their risk, their life, their
They
fate.
say ki what is in 27,001 for companies like us? I mean,
Oh, that we can always help them. I can always help any sectorial organization where there is, if exploited, can be a threat to them. Technically and logically, we can prove them, but it's very difficult to convince an adamant person. You should let go them to their fate. Believe me, I mean,
what is the CMM difference between CMM and IS fundamentally? When someone says ki we are into CMM, why do we need ISMS?
adamant recording will help you to some way. Kataria sir, ये recording मुझे भी share करो. मैं भी ये share करूंगी because this is a very common problem all of us face. People are very happy and complacent till things go wrong. I remember, I think it was Obama who used to say, who says training is costly or who says for our practical purpose certification is costly? Face the consequences otherwise. If you don't be aware of what are the issues, be ready to close your business. And you have to decide whether you want to be in business or not. Choice is yours. But we have to make them very clear that you are not only making your life miserable by ignoring these facts. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Don't do that. But I still agree. I fully agree. I'm in the same business. I have seen people being very conscious, and because the standard allows you a residual risk to be accepted by the top boss, they have said we have accepted this risk. Our bosses has given us full freedom to close the business if required. In other words, but then fine. I mean, such people don't waste your time. The pie is big enough. We are very busy otherwise with other people. Let us do for them. There are many people who are also interested. So
I,
ignore such small bees.
yes,
Ignore such.
agreed, ma'am. There are small people also in MSMEs who are very committed, who say ki we want it, And one more, I think you have been very generous in answering questions. So, and you have been a veteran also. So that's the reason we are throwing these questions at you. Now, these days, in the other ISO systems, the manual has been dispensed with. I mean, generally, okay, people do have a manual, but there are some people who still feel here the new systems don't require the new versions to having a
It's not
manual.
feel. The version doesn't call for it. It's a reality. We don't need a manual.
There is no need of a manual, then what is
Absolutely.
but then there is a need for SOPs and controls, right?
Yeah, indeed. There is a need of document.
There is a need of controls at least, no? The SOPs for various controls. I think that is that enough for them to qualify for being audited? I think
It is also an evidence that you are compliant to the law. And scan your brain and understand your intentions, isn't
no, please, ma'am, we lost your audio for some time. I mean, will the auditor take a very serious view if there is no manual?
No. No auditor should ever do that. Manual can be pardoned, but not the controls, not the
Not the
policies,
controls.
not the
Okay,
procedure.
okay. Agreed. Right, ma'am. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, then one question I had was when you were discussing objectives. Now, because you actually, emphasize the word the objectives have to be improvement oriented. What if the objectives are only maintenance oriented? That I will restrict the number of incidents to, 5 this year, That's all. And I want to keep it that way for the next 3 years.
Deming used to say survival is not mandatory. The rate at which things are changing, if I want to say, I want to be here for next 3 years, then other people will go ahead of you. Tell them you remind me of Alice in the Wonderland. Because if you don't move at the pace of others, you're going to be always lagging when they vanish.
Because
Survival is not mandatory. If you want to be in the business, you have to be having fire in the belly. You have to put in extra efforts. And if you want to leave without extra efforts, fine. As an auditor, we will not challenge. But as a well-wisher, we'll make you aware. Others will bypass you. Don't leave with. I mean, if anybody is willing to compromise that 5 incidences, itself is a compromise. I mean, I remember in my school days, if I used to score at 98 in 100 out of 100 in maths, my parents used to ask me what happened to 2 marks. I mean, not acceptable. Then I used to say, oh, I'm the topper. They used to say, so what? You should get out in maths, isn't it? Now, if it is a level of 0 incidents and I'm containing, that is after scoring 100 out of 100, and I say that I'm going to maintain 100 in maths, then that was acceptable. But 98 in 100 in my family was never acceptable. The same way, I mean, this is my upbringing. So if somebody is saying I'm happy with 5 incidences, I'll say all the best, sir. You're challenging your luck. Please don't do that. I mean, I'll advise them that this is something risking your business and your luck.
Right.
But
Yeah, got it, ma'am, got it. Because something very interesting that you're saying. Don't you think that people generally, they don't demarcate between plans and objectives? For example, commonly people write, I want to have, I want to have seven awareness programs this year. Now, 7 awareness programs can you consider it as an objective?
you have to ask what is
These are some very
how you concluded that this is a concern for you. Huh?
This is a concern for the auditor. Is it a concern when people say 7 awareness
Yes.
programs is my objective?
Indeed, yes, because the standard is very clear. They talk about objective should be derived from policy and RTP. So look at the risk, and if there are major other risks which are unaddressed and are clicking on the low-hanging fruits, you have to make that you do 100 awareness program. But what happens if these risks are not addressed? You have to have a prioritizing logic. Unless it is established, how can we accept these to be your objectives? At least as an auditor, you give this as a potential non-conformity and observation. Because it is like, I'm very hungry, so I'm going to take coffee. Will that take care of your nutrition and health? No. You have to take proper food. If you can't afford a food, go beg, borrow. But coffee is not going to take care of your food. Don't mix and dilute it to low-hanging fruits. But honestly, believe me, such things we do see when we go for audit. We do see such things.
Man, the problem, generally practically, this person would say, see, last year I had only 3 programs. This year I am having 7. What is your objection to that? This is my objective.
My logic is why whether 3 were not adequate, is there an RTP supporting that? If the people's awareness is a major concern, then yes, how are you happy with 7? Why not 70? Understand the logic, and if it is logically correct, accept it. But if it is illogical, make them aware that you cannot afford being illogical in this business. Please don't do that. Appeal them.
Yeah.
But however, after a certain level, you cannot even influence your own self.
You
Because
cannot,
I'm
you
the-
cannot, ma'am. Yeah, it's true. Because the thing is, they would be so adamant, they would say, it is my objective. You see, semantics is not important. I'm doing something, I'm doing some improvement, whether it's a plan or an objective. How are you concerned? I mean, those are the general objections.
Yeah, you should
Yeah.
forgive them. Such
I
adamant
think-
people should be forgiven. Why you want to burn your blood?
I would like to say
Yeah.
little light on this. If you see today, lifespan of companies have reduced very much, not like unlike 50 years, 100 years. So now this objective is very important tool, I feel. And now everybody is shifting from quality system to a managed system to OKR, KPI and OKR, all these things. Now OKR again, you are making it only for 90 days or 180 days. You're not making it for 3 years. Objective has to be, as Dr. Sanjani has initially told, that you have to carry out the risk and see, and then prioritize, and then take the objective. Now there, if the weakness is awareness, people are not aware of the system which you have implemented. So definitely you have to put more efforts on training programs, have more training programs. Now another thing, which is again internal audit. Now, again, people go for once in a year. I think we had to increase this frequency at least 3 months or 6 months, because when we are having OKR, you are taking it every month. You are means you are reviewing it and verifying it, and then plan is being changed. So I think this is a bit a little question mark. It will depend upon the type of organization, context of organization, the people, their education qualification, type of product they produce. That's all I have to say. Thank you, sir.
ऐसा व्हाट्स योर टेक जब लोग है ना अपने प्लान को ऑब्जेक्टिव दिखा देते हैं, डू यू इग्नोर इट सेइंग कि चलो कुछ तो किया है? मतलब आई मीन ऑब्जेक्टिव सब मेजरेबल है, देखो आई एम प्रपोजिंग 7 प्रोग्राम्स, दिस इज माय ऑब्जेक्टिव, मतलब व्हाट डू यू जनरली डू इन दीस सिचुएशंस?
No, I think I'll go with the face value of the organization. Let's have their own system and their own. So as an auditor, I am not going to impose on him.
नहीं sir, आप समझ गए ना सर, why I'm asking this? Even in atomic
Yeah.
energy, these huge departments, people raise these objections when we do their internal audits and all.
Correct.
They
Correct.
कि यार आपको क्या प्रॉब्लम है, मैंने कुछ इम्प्रूवमेंट कर रहा
देखो
हूँ,
सर,
मैंने
सिस्टम डाइल्यूट हो रहा है तो we shouldn't encourage it. That's all I can say. But things we cannot change.
राइट,
हम खुद पे नहीं कंट्रोल
We
कर सकते
cannot
तो किसी
change.
और को क्या कंट्रोल करेंगे?
Correct.
बहुत डिफिकल्ट
Let's
सवाल है
discuss
ये. We
later
have
on. I think we can, this
Yeah,
point we
yeah.
can discuss later on,
ISMS
one to
answer.
one. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this has no ISMS answer. Fully taken. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I'm happy. A lot of thoughts are triggered and a lot of good initiatives will be an outcome of this. So thank you, Mr. Kataria, for giving me this opportunity. Nice
Welcome,
meeting
welcome.
you again and look forward to get associated with your team for audits also.
Sure, sure. We
Thank you
will
so
share
much.
with you our today's proceedings.
Thank you
In
so
fact,
much. Thanks
yeah,
a lot.
welcome, welcome,
My pleasure, sir. Thank you so much.
welcome. Back to Sumit sir and Jyoti.
Hello,
Yes, dear.
ma'am, we do have one more question.
Yes.
That is, what security measures are taken to protect ICS data on its portal? And
It
why
is not
is-
for me, dear. I'm still not yet ICS member. Your IT
Achha,
team
okay.
should be able to address it.
Yeah, sure.
I would love to be. I would love to be. I've been appealing and requesting you all, but I'm not the right person as on today.
this is a purely on ICS. I think this question is for Dr. Kataria actually.
Not for me.
So sorry. So sorry for
And
that.
that's
for
the reason I
ICS.
ignored it, honestly. I would love to be a part of your team, but currently I'm not.
Okay, ma'am.
Thanks, dear.
Thank you, ma'am, for the presentation and explaining the topic in a simplifying way.
There's one more from Nagaraju, it seems. Nagaraju, madam, you can take it.
What is it?
Can you share your views on data masking?
Oh, Mr. Raju, you please unmute and tell me what exactly you mean, because data masking is too generic. And generally from designing to take care of the confidentiality, these practices are taking place. But then it is two general questions. You have to be a little specific because in such a general platform, it's very difficult to answer. You have to evaluate. If at all I have to generalize,
Nagaraj,
I'll say,
yeah. I think it's an interesting question, but Mr. Nagaraju should actually elaborate this question. It will be interesting for us also. Nagaraju, can you please put on your audio and
Madam, good morning. This is Nagaraji from ICS Hyderabad. Just I am asking about the data masking, about the new controls in ISO 27002 and 2022.
it is very true. If you go to any ISO website for that matter and try to see any of the standard, they show you the basic definition first 5 pages and then the last pages. And they say for rest of it, go and buy the standard. Okay. So they show you part of the data which can be readily available on the public domain, but they try to prevent the remaining data and request you to follow the route. Even these standards are so encrypted, you try to copy these definitions and try to paste it to prepare your presentation, you won't be able to do that, isn't it? So they ensure that those who are interested can have a curtain raiser. but they cannot use this for any business or any other learning purpose. That has to be officially routed through their purchasing service, because they're basically in selling. And we, as a consultant, as a trainer, as an auditor, I've seen people who say, Madam, unless I listen to you what you're doing, how do I know that you're a good trainer? So I give them my presentation, I give them teaching, and then they conclude, now thank you, madam, I have Mr. X who is more friendly and I like to do it from Mr. X. So I lost all my control, isn't it? So data masking is to safeguard poor people like us who are spending a lot of time in developing it. And we are selling that data, honestly, if you allow me. My experience, my knowledge, and my expertise, I'm selling through means of data. All this document, when it is readily available, unless I've authorized it, should not be shared with any third party. Of course, if I want to share it, I can share it. So that choice, when I'm going to sell a standard, visit an ISO site. That is the best classical example of data masking. They make you aware of what is a standard, but you can't download it, you cannot copy it, you cannot read it in totality. And this is very possible in most of the digital books available, which are paid version, which are free version, they're available everywhere. Are we clear on this? Have I answered you, Mr. Nagaraju?
Yeah, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Well, team, I believe I'm delaying everybody on this weekend day. All of you, please feel free to call me or text me or route it through ICS. I'm sure you are here thanks to ICS because you have good relations. It'll be pleasure continuing the discussion. But indeed, all of you must be feeling hungry as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you once again, ICS team, for including me in this August gathering. And see you all soon.
Our next section is on.
Just give me a second. I think Shubham has been asking that too many times. So let me just revert to him. Shubham, we already have a software which is in-house. So we work on a .NET software which is made by us. All licenses which are CAL licenses on individual computers are in place. All our softwares in terms of developmental are in place. We've got a developmental license which is in place. We have a firewall and we've got dedicated servers. So we do not use the internet domain or the web space to hold any of our servers. All our servers are in-house and internal placed. To be very specific, we've got about 6 servers which are held within the head office. Other than that, all these servers are locked through a data access which is password protected. So all those controls are in place. So it's like a SAP. We have an indigenously developed SAP. We've got a full IT team which works on those SAP, and that SAP is already controlled through licensing and CALs. So all databases, which is the SQL servers, the other servers, are all data bound and licensed. So I hope that takes care of your question, Shubham. If there's anything, you can get in touch with me. And thanks so much, Sanjeevani ma'am. Amazing.
You're too nice to answer in this way. Can I tell you, Mr. Kataria, you're too sensible to answer this question. If I were you and if I were asked this question, I would have said, what is your interest in my data? Are you a hacker? Are you a developer? Or you're my associate?
Correct. But it comes from my internal employees.
Anyway, thanks. Just kidding.
Thank you so much, ma'am. An amazing presentation. Really a lot of insight. Pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thanks a lot.
Over to you, ma'am.
Jyoti ma'am, it's you, I believe, for concluding, because I have done.
Yes, ma'am. Just a minute.
Our next section is on 8th October 2022. A topic is India and international relations. Will be head by Dr. Vikramaditya Narayan, and he shall be taking the topics Indian diaspora, food security, Russia-Ukraine impact on trade, question and answer session. On behalf of ICS is pleased to provide you all its research and development, integrated management system, QMS, CMS, and OHSMS, excellence in educational management, ISO made easy in Gujarat, Marathi, Telugu, and Hindi. Feedback form. Please register on www.sadgunsang.org and go into a login and give us feedback. On behalf of Sadgun Sangh team, I would like to express my gratitude to all the esteemed delegates of the webinar for their presence and contribution to make this webinar a great success. Now we officially close the session. Thank you all.
Thank you. See you. Bye bye.
Bye.